Good morning, everyone. This is our podcast, The Filmmaker's Life. My name is Joanne Butcher, and I am a business coach working with filmmakers on, basically, I teach everything filmmakers don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about raising money. They don't want to talk about business. All of that stuff is what I teach. And so today I am so excited to be able to introduce to you Sandi DuBowski. And I have known Sandi now for, I guess, over 20 years, 25 years, I don't know. Anyway, it's a long time. It's a long time. And we met when Sandi was raising money for his feature film, Trembling Before God. So we're talking now a long time ago. And I just was so excited to see Sandi's film, A Sabbath Queen, about 2 weeks ago. And I don't start with a bio, Sandi, and you'll see why. But what I like to do on this interview is to talk about the very beginnings. And so my first question to you is, when did you first know you were a filmmaker?
Well, it's so interesting because I think some of us approach that question with a noun, and some of us approach that question as a verb or an adjective. And I think I was making my first video, which was a video where I stole my father's toupee and I ran it over my 88-year-old grandmother's house, who lived 5 blocks away, and we pulled out her wigs that she hadn't worn in 5 years, and we played dress up and filmed each other. And then she started telling me how she thought she was a man and how she thought my father wasn't a man. And it became this like gender blending tale across 3 generations in my family. And it was a video called Tomboy Chick. Um, and Tomboy Chick wound up playing at the Rotterdam Film Festival and going to the Whitney Museum and being broadcast on WNET. And I didn't go to film school. So I just sort of, I was filming with a family camcorder. So I think that, at that point, I never defined myself as a filmmaker. I was making a film, I was making a video. And, only later, I think when I started doing Trembling Before God, did I kind of own the noun. I owned being a filmmaker. I got my first grant checks, in the mail, and I could sort of hold that up, and this was the proof. So yeah, I think it was just a gradual process, and I think many of us have a very untraditional path towards filmmaking, especially in documentary. And certainly that was the case for me. It wasn't something that I like went to film school and set out to become. I sort of fell into the lap of filmmaking.
And how old were you when you made
Oh, something just happened.
Tomboy Chick? Oh
Um,
no, did I freeze?
You did
oh, you
freeze.
you
Yeah, you
froze for me.
Oh,
froze.
That's
I'm
okay.
so sorry. I got a brand
Uh,
new computer
so
thinking that this would stop, but apparently not. So yeah, my question was, how
I
old
mean,
were you?
it could be, and it could be that it could be that I am also in this hotel and in South Florida with bad Wi-Fi. So don't assume blame on your part.
No, 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 no,
I was
no. I
20.
have terrible Wi-Fi. We all know about
Okay.
it. We've talked about it for months.
Oh, got it. So I was 22 years old when I made Tomboy Chick, and my grandmother was 88. So, I was a quarter of her life. Um, but yeah, I was 22. I had just graduated college. And I was working on a feature film about a lesbian couple, an interracial lesbian couple who eat a piece of irradiated nuclear sushi. It was a film called Fresh Kill by Shuli, and I think my title in the end was key art department assistant. I was actually working for Shari Freelo, who's now one of the
Oh,
programmers of Sundance Film Festival, and I
yes.
was just an amazing group of people. Um, but yeah, I was doing that and filming Tomboy Chick.
What were you working on with Shari Freelo?
Oh, I was doing things like, hauling like scrap metal out of yards to build as a set. I was trying to source like 1,000 pencils. It really was like this very avant-garde experimental film that really brought in like the kind of luminaries of the East Village and
Mm.
um, all these performance artists, George C. Wolfe, and you know,
Oh,
it was really quite an amazing experience. And I realized after being on set, I was like, I do not want to do fiction, feature filmmaking. No, thank you. I like documentary.
I love the jobs, that you got. I remember years ago, I had a friend who I used to run a nonprofit in Miami Beach, a cinema and a film school, and she was always saying, "I want to work in the arts. I want to work in the arts. I want to work in the arts." And I said, "Well, why don't you come in one day and volunteer?" And I
Uh-huh.
was finalizing a grant. So, it was back in the day before the online. So we had to make, 30 copies or something of this grant. And I asked her to do that. So she was at the Xerox machine all day. And the next day I said to her, "So how did you like working in the arts?"
She was like, I'm done.
I'm done. That was it. She was absolutely finished.
Ah,
It's absolutely finished.
that's great.
And I think, people have this idea that there's something about being in film that's so romantic and sexy and red carpet exciting, and no.
No, I mean I mean, in documentary, you're a you're doing visualizing, you're also schlepping like a lot of boxes and, equipment. You're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. You're a herder of people. You're a people herder, you're a therapist, you're a trauma counselor, you're there's like so many elements that, you're an accountant, you're a marketer, you're a social media expert. I mean, there's so much that is not just about how we light, how we craft, how we shoot, but all the concentric circles that go into the making and the movement of a film. So
Yeah, trauma
it's,
counselor
it's
is
a
one
real,
that we tend to not
I-
see that. I worked on a film with Doris Wishman. It sounds as if it's a little bit like your Fresh Kill experience, but I worked on a film with Doris Wishman, and I think my title is script supervisor, but I asked if I could have the title of set therapist. It was just there was so
oh
much
yeah, yeah.
work that needed to be done on that set, and
Wow.
I seem to be get
Because
that job.
Right, right. And look, people are bearing their lives. It's very intimate, it's very vulnerable. And I think now we're finally paying a lot more attention to what the experience is for protagonists who are really sharing their lives, both in the making of the film and in its movement, around the world. So, it's something that I'm very conscious of with Sabbath Queen and also with Trembling Before God and Jihad.
With Trembling Before God, which was when I met you, and I met you when you had about 10 minutes of the film, I think. You'd already been working on it for many years. So can you tell us about how you got involved in that project and tell everybody a little bit about what the film is? I tell people about it in my words, but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear from you what it's about.
So Trembling is about Hasidic and Orthodox Jews that are lesbian or gay. And it really is about how people reconcile their their love, their sexuality with the biblical prohibitions against homosexuality. So it has a real range, it's a chorus of voices. There's a Orthodox lesbian couple who are high school sweethearts. There's a first openly gay Orthodox rabbi who came out, during the film. There are people who are in marriages who are closeted to their spouses, and we film them in silhouette. So it's a really quite a range of people. And that film premiered at Sundance and Berlin in 2001 and went on to really change the world. It was quite extraordinary what happened with Trembling and back in the aughts.
The way I talk about the film is I
Mm.
say it's about gay and lesbian Orthodox Jews and how they struggle with their um, love of God and the way that their religion and their families often define them according to their
Yeah,
sexuality.
absolutely. That's a great
Yeah,
description.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that your work is so much about God.
Mm,
It feels that way to me. It feels so much about a conversation about God and about how we all are loved by God. I don't know if you would think of it like that, but that's what I
mm,
get. That's the message I get from your
right.
work.
And I might even say that we could even, I mean, this film is, about a lab shul, which is a part laboratory, part synagogue, which, the Rabbi Amichai defines as God optional. So, we might even say the love of spirit, not necessarily just the
Right,
God word, which some
right.
people is really toxic
Yes,
and they've only experienced harm under that version, of the sort of great spirit that animates this world and or the
yes.
many spirits. So I think Trembling was much more in a religion box, and
Aha.
this one is definitely pushing boundaries in profound ways.
Right. Before we switch to Sabbath Queen, I just want to go back to when you just said about that Trembling really had an impact. And I just would love to talk because I talk about you all the time. And I talk about you as being the person that really opened my eyes to what impact could be
Yeah,
with a documentary film. Like, and I feel as though you've become a case study for, how to do it really, really well. Is that true? Am I saying the right thing?
I'm appreciate it. Thank you. I mean, I think that Trembling really was a tipping point, but that was very, it wasn't just sort of like it went out into the world and it changed the lives of individuals and their families, communities, and certainly religious leaders. I mean, that was happened in a major way. But we
Mm.
also did things like we convened the first ever Orthodox mental health conference on homosexuality. And
Oh.
we raised grant funding and brought in, therapists, psychiatrists, school counselors from 16 cities in North America. And we trained them in queer affirmative therapy. In fact, we had a session with people talking about the queer people talking about the worst therapy experiences of their lives, which,
Mm.
therapists ate up. They loved it. So, we did things like, we did a project where we knew that the film was going to go to television in Israel, and there was like so little resource out there. If kids are going to see the film on TV, then they're going to talk about it at school the next day. So we wound up um, bringing together a group of facilitators, and they went out and did private screenings for 2,000 principals
Mm.
and teachers in not just the secular school system, but the religious school system to
Mm.
prepare them for a national broadcast. So we thought very carefully about how we could make change interventions, and how we
Mm.
could move people. And we realized that rabbis were not going to be the first people to change.
Mm.
Priests, ministers, rabbis, they're going to be maybe some of the last people to change. It's
Mm.
going to be who's taking care of the community. And so the mental health profession was a very key kind of frontline, first responder. Um, and then parents. I mean, we had so many parents who watched the movie. We had Orthodox parents who had disowned their children. They
Right.
watched the film and they started speaking to them again.
Wow.
You know, we had a woman who was working on the film and working on our outreach, and her fiance said, I'd love to see the film, what you're working on. And she's like, I'd love to share it with you. He watches a movie, he turns to her and says, you know what? I'm gay. I can't marry you.
Um,
So, that happened. I mean,
right.
but so many people, including, I mean, this film came out in 2001. So it's been 24 years. We're almost at the 25th anniversary, of Trembling, and we're going to do a big, 25th anniversary, in 2026. But I have so many people come to me and say that film helped me come out.
Mm,
That film changed my life. I mean,
mm,
it's just extraordinary and so humbling and moving. And our films really matter. Our films really make a difference on, and sometimes you don't even find out about it until two
right.
decades later, you know.
Yeah, when the 25th anniversary comes, that you're going to hear a lot more stories. In
Yeah.
terms of the fundraising, because I feel as though you've become such an expert fundraiser,
Hmm.
but did the cost of the film did you end up raising more money for impact than for the film?
I would say for Trembling Before God, I think, these are longitudinal.
Yes.
I mean, Sabbath Queen is really longitudinal. Trembling took 6 years to make. There's a lot of cost of editing. So I would say that usually the production budget,
Okay.
is larger. But I think that raising significant impact funding is kind of key to my work because, especially now with the way that the distribution landscape has collapsed. And we need funds to get our work out there. I mean, I just saw this morning that Wendy Schmidt just took a majority stake in Alex Gibney's Jigsaw Productions, partly because I think the work is not necessarily getting out there. And I
Uh-huh.
think that, there's as much need and attention towards funding for impact. But yeah, I mean, my style of fundraising, is not necessarily singular, but it is definitely in a unique category, of how we can mobilize individuals and foundations, to support the work, as opposed to kind of going a more co-production or, kind of pre-buy model from streamers or broadcasters. That we did with Jihad for Love. We had a real
Oh,
co-production, from
really? Uh-huh.
from from French, German, British, US TV, in those days. But a lot of my directorial work has been through benefit parties, hosting. I mean, you were at one in
That's
Miami.
right.
I mean, I threw benefit parties for Sabbath Queen in Miami and Philadelphia and Boston and DC and New York and Chicago and San Francisco and LA. I mean, we really did a lot, um,
Yes.
to try to find, support. And that led to people who would come on board as executive producers. You know, it led to, foundation grants. I mean, a lot of, grant writing and fundraising. So,
Yes, a lot. And you have become very good at it. Just in terms of Jihad for Love, did you enjoy the experience, the co-production experience, or does it feel as though, okay, well, I did that and now I'm doing something else?
yeah, I think that for that film, it really made sense.
Mm.
I think each film needs to find
Yes,
its own funding ecosystem,
yes,
and it
yes.
needs to find its own match. So, when like there just wasn't the world of Muslim philanthropy and Muslim
Uh-huh,
individual donors who could
uh-huh.
support,
Right.
a Jihad for Love, which is about Islam and homosexuality. So they would have to be people who, would want to support sort of a queer Muslim story. Um, so I think that for that film, it made a lot of sense, you know. Um, and I think for Sabbath Queen, there were quite a number of people who were very vested, had a real vested interest in this story of a progressive Jewish, you know, sort of narrative. So, and a queer one and a feminist one. And so I think we sort of find our funding paths based on
Yes.
the story.
Let's play the trailer, but before we play the trailer, can you just give us like the log line or of Sabbath Queen, or just tell us, set it up for us?
Um, well, maybe in short, Sabbath Queen is about a trickster, renegade, artist, performer, queer rabbi. And and maybe I'll just leave it at that, and
Yes.
you can play the trailer.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Emily.
I'm Amichai. I broke the law. According to our family story, I descend from 38 consecutive generations of rabbis. My grandfather, who died so brutally. My uncle, the chief rabbi of Israel.
I feel sorrow for a Jew who doesn't follow tradition.
In my early 20s, I was publicly outed, and I did not give my consent. I came to New York in 1997. I discovered a way to be really who I am. I've created this fictitious character.
L'Hadassah Gross.
The Sabbath Queen is almost in the house.
This is a fairy tale, but it's from the Bible, so it is true.
It's theater.
You take the traditions and you basically threw them away. You denied really who you are.
The next evolution, God optional, everybody friendly, congregation.
So many Jews are simply lost.
Women are claiming their right to pray the way I believe a Jew should be in the 21st.
We are definitely having Wi-Fi problems today.
Everywhere around the world.
Wow. Okay, we didn't get to see the whole trailer, but having just so recently seen the film, seeing the trailer is it's really moving. What an incredible film this is. Every time I talk to anyone about the film, I don't say the number 38. So but you have it in the trailer. So it proved it to me that it was really true, because every time I think this rabbi comes from 38 generations of rabbis, I keep thinking it can't be true, but I'm so glad it was in the trailer.
I mean, it's a dynasty. I mean, it's like 1,000-year-old dynasty. I mean, sometimes I think that it's like the Kennedys of Judaism.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so I've forgotten his name, Rabbi
Amichai.
Amichai. Rabbi Amichai comes from this 38,000-year tradition of Orthodox rabbis. And then somehow he has the courage to be his true self. It's just an extraordinary story.
True. It's true.
Did you meet him?
Extraordinary.
Did you meet him through Trembling? Was that
I
the?
did.
Yeah.
I did. In fact, I went to Jerusalem to look for people to be in Trembling, and everyone kept saying, "Oh, the chief rabbi of Israel's nephew is gay. You should talk to him." And I met him, asked him to be in the film, and he refused because he's too much of a diva and he wanted his own movie. He said, "I don't do collage." Now, in all fairness, Trembling was so much about the struggle to belong within the bounds of orthodoxy, and he was already sort of smashing the box in post-denominational, but we became friends. And after 5 years of friendship, I began filming with him in 2003.
It's really an incredible story. And the way that you constructed the film was, to me, just so amazing, because we sort of, it's like there are so many huge stories. So we learn about, I think, Lab Shaul. Do we learn about that in the film before we hear about his family, and then before we hear about the concentration camp part of the story? Because these are such big stories that we get to in the film, and they all keep weaving together and around each other. It's an amazingly made film.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm very proud, especially of the editing, and that it's a non-linear telling of the story as well, and
Yeah.
that we move almost like, I mean, Amikai's identity is so kaleidoscopic, and just like it touches on the radical fairy, the queer radical fairy world, and the Holocaust, family story, and him being a queer bio dad, and creating
Um,
this God optional synagogue, and all this kind of counterculture performance that he was doing in a drag queen character. I mean, it's just, to try to weave this all together in an hour, 45 minutes, which I just, was 6 years of editing. It was 1,800 hours of footage,
mm,
original footage. It was 1,100 hours of archival material. I mean, it was just an enormous volume, a mountain to climb. So my editors and writers, Francisco Bello and Jeremy Stolberg, you know, just I mean, working with them was the best creative experience of my life.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really because there's so much story and so much to tell. Um, I almost had forgotten about Hadassah Gross by the time I just saw this trailer. And
Right.
she is so wonderful. And when Rabbi Amichai discovers this character, it's almost like she just gets channeled through him. So there's like one whole story about somebody who's an artist, who's a religious leader, who's a disruptor,
Mhm.
but when that experience comes where he just is sort of in Trinidad, we talk about the spirit mounting the performer, but
Wow.
that was what that was. He was mounted by the spirit of Hadassah Gross.
Wow. That has some interesting erotic, like tinge to it. It's like, but yeah, I mean it, on and because Hadassah often comes out during the drunken carnival holiday of Purim, Amichai does not always remember what he says or what she says and what she's channeling because it is almost shamanistic
Yes.
in terms of this character inhabiting Amichai. It's a very mystical experience that Amichai experiences through her.
Yes, and so in the film when we meet her, I mean she's very funny, she's
Uh-huh.
pretty hilarious. I love that line, everything it's in the Bible, so it must be true. But she's very, very, very funny, but there is this very mystical sense that there's something happening that's outside of Rabbi Amichai that
Mhm.
he doesn't have control over, which in a way is very much the source of creativity for the artist.
Yeah. I mean, a mask can be full of glitter and it can be sparkly, but it also can hide a shadow. There's something deep underneath a mask that can come out, when we're not in a kind of just verite real world, you know. So there's something, that is sometimes disturbing, things that need to be unearthed and unleashed, in our psyches that come
Yes.
out. And sometimes that's the holiest work, you
Yeah,
know?
that's very much the tradition of carnival. So
Yeah.
uh, I'm half Trinidadian. Emily lives in Trinidad, and Carnival is just about to come this year. And
Right.
so the tradition of Carnival in that's the French and Spanish tradition is very much about being able to wear the mask, being able to be the person that you maybe wouldn't get to be. But it's a very in Trinidad, it's a very deeply creative process. It's just that in Trinidad, it's like everybody participates in
Right.
Carnival.
Yeah.
So everybody gets to have this creative, mystical experience. Um, but it was really interesting to learn a little bit more about the way Purim in the Jewish calendar works, because I didn't know that part about the drunken carnival.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun.
I love it. our interview is so calendar appropriate,
Uh-huh.
like Mardi Gras is coming in New Orleans. Like, yeah, this is the time, you know, this is the time that it's we're beginning to move into that world. And then what happens after Carnival in Jewish tradition is that you move to the next moon, and the next moon is Passover, which is
Mm.
liberation. So there's something about the carnival that unleashes these forces, and that they get manifested in like full, you know, societal liberation, um, and freedom.
Beautiful. And can you tell us a little bit about the meaning of Sabbath Queen? Because
Mhm.
I was really fascinated. My own spiritual path is very much, I have a guru, um, tantric teacher. She was Jewish. I remember telling a rabbi one time, "Oh, I'm going up to Kashi Ashram, and the guru originally was Jewish," and he said, "Oh, all the best gurus are Jewish."
Um, well,
Line.
it definitely is like we're tapping into the Jew boo world, you know.
Right.
Um, I'm not a rabbi, so I'll give my lay perspective, but originally the film was called Rabbi. And I think Jeremy and Francisco said to me, Sandy, you've got to change the title. Like, no one wants to see a film called Rabbi. And I was like, what? I was so used to it. But they really convinced me to change it to Sabbath Queen because she is so much in the film. And, Sabbath Queen is the queen of time. Sabbath Queen, she arrives on the holy Friday night of the Sabbath of Friday night. And, she's the female divine, the embodiment of the female divine. And so, it's a really embedded in the tradition. At one point in the Friday night service, we all turn to the door in the back and we bow and we say Boi Kala, welcome, bride, you know. So, there's a really, these are not what you necessarily think, in these patriarchal traditions, but they are there, and they're, you know, I mean, we used to go into the fields in the medieval period and pray outside. It wasn't a movement that was really synagogue based and learning based. It was dancing, it was singing, it was the moon, it was, the
Mm,
feminine, the moon. I mean, so I think that the title of Sabbath Queen really captures that spirit,
yes.
of both Amichai and the way that, you know, of Jewish tradition and Jewish ritual, and also of this drag character, Rebbetzin Hadassah. And, it was great to also work with an animator and create an animated version of the drag character who goes down to the bottom of the Dead Sea to rescue, the feminine divine from the clutches of the, you know, hardcore patriarchal rabbis. So, I think that um, I'm so happy that we called the film Sabbath Queen. And when I told people that we changed the title, they were like, "What is the new title?" Sabbath Queen. Oh, I love it. I'm so glad that you changed the title. So yeah. So
Well,
it's been
rabbi is
wonderful.
still kind of in the masculine world, even though obviously not every rabbi is male, but Sabbath Queen is so definitely in the world of the feminine. And my own experience of religion, spirituality is very much about, claiming the feminine, and it's so sort of missing from
Yeah.
most traditional experiences of religion,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it seems as if it was somehow the female divine was somehow done away with, thousands of years ago or something like that across the world. And so reclaiming that is really incredible and special, certainly, to many of us who are right now freaked out about the masculine having taken over,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
in,
Absolutely. I mean, it's giving a queer wink, to it all, and it's giving, You know, it's really embracing that. Look, the film is also so non-binary.
Mm.
You know, it's like a real non-binariness around its approach around gender and sexuality, its approach around Jew, not Jew, and around the sacred
Uh-huh.
hybridity and the mixing of all of our traditions and of our love relationships. I mean, there's a Muslim Jewish couple in the film, there's a Hindu Jewish couple in the film,
There's a Buddhist
you know, and
couple.
it's also not, yeah, a Buddhist sort of Jew, not Jew couple in the film. I mean, he defines it as he's like, I'm not a goy, which, you know, is a term for non-Jew. I'm a joy. So it's a Jew joy wedding at the end of the film. And also it's non-binary around Israel-Palestine. It's around like,
Mm.
you know, it's trying to really hold what had been so polarized and so, you know, and really looking at like where is the mixing? Where is the connection? Where are we really trying to shift, do a paradigm shift in the 21st century, you know, to, you know, the kind of reality of the future, you know, not this like dragging us back into this like oppressive past, which we're witnessing everywhere right now.
Yeah.
So this film is really a clarion call for, you know, like our values, you know, and who we are really, not who we're trying to, you know, stuff into another box that doesn't serve us.
And then in the film, we also have the whole section or sections that go back to Auschwitz and go back to some of the worst moments in world history, let alone Jewish history. But and it feels as though we also have this experience of, well, some people survived and some people survived and were able to continue the tradition. And then they have this belief that the tradition must be followed. But there was even so much opening and softening with some of the other members of Amachai's family that was just beautiful. And I did not expect it.
Right.
The whole way through the film, I thought they were going to stay in this place of, you know, rejection and criticism and to see, you know, these rabbis with all this power and influence open up their hearts was just incredible.
I mean, that for, you know, I mean, I waited 13 years to ask Amikai's brother, who's a major Orthodox rabbi, Rabbi Benny Lau, to be in the movie. And when Amichai was, you know, about to be ordained as a rabbi in this liberal seminary, Jewish theological seminary in New York, Amikai's brother decided to come. And that is a big deal because he doesn't necessarily approve of this
Mhm,
path, of this
mhm.
liberal path, but he shows up as a brother. And, you know, and that interview, I flew to Jerusalem and sat with him and interviewed him. And, you know, and in the film, he says, the closet is deaf. I just started weeping. I mean, how amazing. I've done work with so many, you know, very traditional Orthodox rabbis and priests, ministers, and just to hear that was so extraordinary. Um,
Wow.
and we just did a premiere in Jerusalem, and
Uh-huh.
he came to do the Q&A with us after the film, you know, and
Did,
then the family had a big meeting because the nieces, the nephews, the cousins, Amikai's mother, Amikai's siblings all came to watch the movie, and they did a family meeting to talk about the film. And it was the first time that they really had a family conversation about Amikai being gay, like a really deep conversation after like 30 years about all of Amikai's choices about, you know, leaving Orthodoxy and going to America. And it was like a very charged conversation and quite like just history making for this family. So, you know, I love this kind of brother to brother dynamic in the movie because Amikai's brother shows up with love, he shows up with respect, he shows up with discomfort and with disagreement. And
yes.
in this world right now where we're so polarized and people stop speaking to each other and there's such difference, it is so amazing to me that these role models of these two brothers can be in that difficult dialogue. And I think they're role models for our world right now, for our country, and for our time.
Yes, absolutely. It's so moving to see. And I'm sure that the film is going to have this impact on a lot of people. You know, I can be orthodox and have my rules, and I don't have to hate and judge people. Unfortunately, we're in a world right now where hate seems to be the way it is. But all the characters, you know, and Amichai himself, you know, he constantly shows up for his family. He constantly shows up no matter how much they're rejecting him. That's what I saw, you know, over all of those 21 years that you were shooting. He would keep showing up. He would keep showing up and being his lovely self. You know, so people can't ignore it.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Amichai showed up for them. It wasn't
Yes.
just them showing up for him.
Right.
No, that's so true. I hadn't thought about that until just now, is that he, you know, and it makes me really think, because this time makes one think about why do some people stretch, and
Right.
why do some people have the inability to stretch and
Right.
hold complexity and
Yeah.
hold, you know, conversations that are hard,
Right.
and I really bow to this family. I really find it so moving in this time that they have found within themselves the ability to hold a very complicated family story. And what's so
Hmm.
interesting is that Amichai just reminded me that, Benny's daughter, Orly, she just started rabbinical school. She's the
Uh-huh.
first woman in this 1,000-year dynasty to become a rabbi.
Right.
And she's in a non-denominational program. And so Amichai's like, oh, I'm old news. She's radical.
This is the big conversation now. So
Yeah,
right at the end of the film, it's like a woman rabbi.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So
It's,
yeah, we'll see what the next generation does.
yeah, yeah, it's great. One of my clients has made a comedy film about a female pastor, and he was really shocked that we got some feedback from people saying, "Oh no, you can't have female pastors." We were like, "Oh wait."
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Wow, we'll have to do a double feature.
It's just, but everything that you're saying about that we're living in this world that's so polarized. I mean, I mentioned to my friend the other day, I was like, oh, look, one of the hostages is getting released. And I was watching it on the news. And she went into this tirade about Israel. And I'm like, isn't it just easy to say I want Jews to do well, I want Palestinians to do well, but people can't see it somehow.
Great. Yeah.
It, I just feel
This is
what you call complexity is just, I just thought that's the way it is. There's complexity.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
nothing,
I
not if
mean,
you're human, nothing is simple.
yeah. And sometimes things are simple. Like, do we want, like, the policies of at least for me, the policies of the Netanyahu government, the policies are just abominable.
Right,
So sometimes it feels simple to just call out injustice, and
right.
at the same time, it's like, um, I think Amichai in the film very much is trying to like hold the pain of his Israeli family and advocate for ceasefire and criticize the government, and really trying to create, like, safety, survival, thriving, for Palestine and Israel. So, I think that's, and it's interesting because we have Palestinian peace activists who are coming to watch the film that are really moved, and we have people who, are coming to see the film, and we address Gaza at the end of the film, and people are saying, thank you for those for that progressive pro-peace stance in the film that really reflects who I am. And then we have people who say, why did you put that in the film?
Yes.
Why do you put God in the film? Like, I love the film, I hate the last 2 minutes. But what's interesting is that we just had somebody who watched the film and said, I love the film, I hate the last 2 minutes, but I'm still recommending it to all my friends. So here was
Yeah.
someone who was able to sit in the discomfort,
With a screening that I was at, somebody stood up and made a comment about Palestinians, and he was trying to sort of be open-minded, but he was basically saying, why would you put murderers in your film, is really what he was saying. And but again, it's like all of the ways that what bizarre. We're having such
Oh,
a weird technology day. It's really strange. But the complexity, works on so many different levels. And I just think your filmmaking is so good at that. And just keep doing it. So the other question I had was about the audiences that you're seeing. Who are the people who are coming? Because when I saw it in Miami at the Miami Jewish Film Festival, I'm sure that there were a lot of LGBT people in the audience, but certainly not everybody. So
no.
who are the people who are coming to see the film?
It's really interesting because the film, like I even just look at our awards for the film. Like we got a queer award at the Hamptons Film Festival. We
Uh-huh.
got a Changemaker award at the Woodstock Film Festival. We got a audience award at the Boston Jewish Film Festival. We got the best documentary at the UK Jewish, and we got a film jury special mention. And we actually just won another the CIMA Awards, the Social Impact Media Awards. We just got um, a special mention from the jury. So it's such an interesting range,
Mm,
and we're going to be in a human rights film festival in Prague, the
mm,
World Festival coming up in
mm,
March.
mm,
So the film really is spanning a very wide audience,
mm,
from documentary to queer, from Jewish to human rights, from, Tribeca Film Festival, the international film festivals, the regional film festivals. And our audiences reflect that. Our audiences are very, very mixed. They're coming at it from such different directions. There's certainly a very wide age range. And sometimes we have, multiple generations coming to see the film.
mm,
We have parents who are boomers or Gen X are bringing their teenagers or their 20 somethings. Sometimes they're coming with the grandparents as well. So it's like three generations. So, um,
mm.
like I had a mother we just had a 5-week theatrical run at IFC, in New York, which was really extraordinary. And we had a mother come with her. She came to see the film, then she said, I'm coming back and I'm bringing my 16-year-old and my 19-year-old. And this 16-year-old teenage daughter said, Mom, this film just changed my life. I can now imagine being a Jew. And, that was so moving to hear. I just
Yeah.
had someone who brought 2 tween girls in Boston. They watched the movie and they said, we want to be mitzvah. So, there's ways in which I think the version of Judaism that we're taught in
Mm,
school is so not who we are necessarily. And that people are finding Amichai's version of everybody friendly, artist driven, God optional, so queer, so feminist, so embracing, so mixing, you know, not demonizing interfaith couples, but really celebrating them, you know? So I think that
gosh.
people are finding that really inspiring, and just to watch, no matter what path you're on, whether it's Catholic or Mormon or Muslim or, that watching someone really struggle with, family, with faith, with, society, like there's something um, in this tenacity that Amichai has to figure out the self and to really remake the world in that is, I think, over so long a period of time, I think is really touching people deeply, because I think so many of us are seekers and so many of us are searching, and so many of us are dealing with conflict right now and trauma, and we're looking for a new world. We really need it, whether it's October 7th or it's the election or it's the fires. Like, there's something I see in our audiences are very tender and very raw,
Mm,
and the film is like really a balm for the
yes.
soul and a real communal experience, which is why, you know, I'm so insistent on really moving it like a movement. I mean, I'm on the road at cinemas pretty much almost every night I can. I'm taking this in a very, very big theatrical release. Right now I'm doing 4 cities in Florida. I just did Fort Lauderdale, Savor Cinema, tonight, Cinema Paradiso in Hollywood, Sunday, Coral Gables Cinema, Monday, Enzian Cinema in Orlando. I mean, we're doing film festivals and cinemas and a big theatrical. I mean, we did 10 days of 10 events in LA in December in the Lemley theaters. We're trying to create soul spas, and Sabbath Queen Friday night feasts. So we're trying to create an expanded cinematic experience where people can also participate in ritual, and not
Mm,
just a movie. That
mm,
Amichai is there leading people communally. So I think
mm.
that there's a lot that we're doing to, really think through what is the experience we want an audience to have, with Sabbath Queen, and how can Amichai do his teaching and his ritual leading, and in ways that are just so integrated into a theatrical release and into a film festival run. And we're in like 65 film festivals, already, and we're opening. I mean, I really wonder how many cities it will be like theatrically, but it's going very far and wide.
And you look so fresh and like you're not every night.
I did just, there's a little, very small but very cute pool outside. So I had like a little morning swim
Nice,
got my, mint lemonade uh
nice.
so yeah, it is trying to nurture on the
Yeah,
road and be healthy,
yeah.
but I am pushing myself because I just see the need and I want to meet people where they are and the needs they have, and it was like that with Trembling. I did 850 live events personally with the film over the
Wow.
years for probably 250,000 people. Uh,
Right.
and I can see that this film is on that same track. Like, because also it's like the distribution landscape, there's just so few documentaries um, that, have a life, a really significant life, and you have to push it. You have to really be the active element. And maybe it's not you, maybe it's a protagonist in the film, or it's an organization that wants to take it out. Not every filmmaker likes the kind of high touch,
Right.
high intensity, you know, um, kind of movement building that I like, that like is in me. Like I thrive with it,
Uh-huh.
and it certainly is like this is your life. I mean, I just had my camp director of a boys peace and leadership camp that I went to when I was 15 and 16. He just came to our San Diego premiere with his wife. He is about to celebrate his 100th birthday, and he just came. My dad's college friend, my dad passed, 8 years ago, and his college friend just came last night to see the film. I mean, that's like, so there were, people who I was friends with in preschool, elementary school have been coming. I mean, it really is like quite extraordinary to, take a movie out into the world and re-experience your entire life.
Right. This is your life. I grew up on that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the I don't think filmmakers can necessarily see exactly how the impact of the film is going to be, but what's your sense even at this early stage? what the impact work is that you're going to be doing moving forward.
The one thing that is great is that we just got a lead grant from the Heartland Foundation,
Oh,
which is Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw's foundation.
cool.
And it was in part to really create a college campus and high school tour with the film. And I think, you know, if the conversation and the dialogue is so fraught around so many of these issues, then certainly on campuses, it's very polarized and fraught. So I
Yeah.
think to really, you know, be able to hold the container, you know, for how to have, you know, conversations about difficult issues and really how to create a pluralist environment, you know, is really important. You know, I don't want, you know, I think so many places are shutting down
Yeah,
spaces of conversation, and we're trying to open them up, you know,
right.
trying to create a place where everyone, you know, can really bring their full self, you know, to the viewing of this film and the sort of a lot of the issues that we need to talk about. So that's a big goal, and I'm in a fundraising mode right now, trying to raise, you know, kind of the matching funds and more funding for that, and really building, you know, curriculum guides and study guides. And so that's a big goal. You know, the intergenerational conversation is a huge
Right.
goal because, you know, I want families and people who've broken to be able to heal and to be able to talk again. Certainly, I think that this can, in Israel, push a, you know, a peace, sort of peace and queer narrative, you know, a real sort of anti-occupation narrative that, you know, needs to change. Um, and, you know, I think that it's, you know, it's a film that can really bridge. It's a bridge building film. You know, Amichai is a disruptor in a lot of ways, but it's also very bridge building. So I think that we want to do that work. And I would love to take this film to Christian seminaries, you know, to reach the next generation of ministers and pastors, you know, um, you know, and to do, there's just so much work that can be done in so many different arenas. You know, I think for the rise of anti-Semitism right now globally, I think the film plays an important role in
Mhm.
reaching people who may have thought that Jews were just one way. I mean, I had a woman in Rome, we screened at Rome Film Festival, and she said, "Oh, wow. You know, she's not Jewish. She said, I thought all Jews were fundamentalists.
Ah,
Wow,
ah,
you just upended all my assumptions and my polarization, and thank you." So, you know, I think that this is going to reach people who may not know that much. You know, certainly a lot of the sort of a younger Gen Z generation may not know much about the Holocaust. And here's like a, you know, here's a family Holocaust story. It's not the dominant narrative of this,
right,
but
right.
but it's like, but it is a strand, and that's going to reach people. And there's so much teaching to be done, you know, when queer people are under attack, when women are under attack, when transgender folks are under attack. Like, I just think that this film is also opening spaces of affirmation, you know, that we can all be loved, we can all dance with the spirit, you know, and you know, and so I'm committed to just really doing this work and not immediately, you know, not moving on. What's your next project? My next project is to take this and like heal the world. Like,
Yes, yes, it's
you know, to
definitely,
do the work of a film. Not just like do 21 years of work and then just like move on to the next thing right away. No, this I see the power in what's happening already, you know, and it's just a 6-month-old baby.
it's so needed. It's so needed. We're all in shock, you know, and we need to remember that yeah, I love the phrase spaces of affirmation, spaces of affirmation where we can be our real selves. Yeah, beautiful. Sandi, thank you so much.
Thank
What
you,
a
Joanne.
pleasure. I'm
Sweet.
so glad you could squeeze us into your
Oh, thank you.
around the world tour and talk
That's
about your filmmaking. It's extraordinary.
oh,
So thank you so much. Enjoy I'll probably see you at one of the screenings over the next couple of days.
That was
And
great.
thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Emily. And we'll be posting this all around. Thank you, Arkan. Arkan is in Egypt. So thanks, Arkan, for being here.
Thank you, Arkan. Okay.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
good day, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.